now.
Yes, I didn't say. What are you looking so sad about, Champ?
I'm surprised at you. I mean, I'm really insulted. I mean, that's not right what you just said.
What do you mean? What I just said?
I mean, I'm gonna get a drink of water. I'm late getting home, but you talk. I said something about the greatest heavyweight champ, man. I'm a hometown man, and you talk about Joe Louis, man. Joe Louis wouldn't be nothing for me. Joe, I tell you, Joe, do you think you would have stood a chance with me?
Well, Clay, during one time during my career, I went on a Bomber of the Month tour.
Bomber of the Month? I would have been a bomb compared to you.
Well, you've been on the tour.
Oh,
Now watch this. A left-right combination by Rocky draws a beautiful left hook counter by La Starza. Oh, his man down. La Starza has been knocked down, but never out. As he himself puts it, I know how to get up. During this, and ducking under those shots by Marciano. Watch.
What's happening, my people? It's Cat Sports again, back for another afternoon with the family. Now, as usual, before we get started, let me give a shout out to the JBT community. It's just boxing talk. We're a group of people who just love to talk boxing. And we're always looking for others to join us. And you don't have to have a podcast. The only requirement is you just have to love to talk boxing. That's all. Miss Cass, Mike Mazik, Bruce Gas, Boxing Jazz, and more. Tim Layton. Salute to everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cass Sports, the Boxtorian. Today, memorable fights. And you know what time it is. If it's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m., it's the Boxtorian bringing you all that boxing history. Boxing is the greatest sport of them all. That's why we love it. Can't get enough of it. How's everybody today? This is the Wednesday afternoon hump day edition of Cass Sports, the Boxtorian. We're going to be talking about some memorable fights today. We got the best fight from every decade for the past century, okay? Except for this decade we're in now. We're only halfway through it. We're going to start with the 2010s, all the way back to the 1910s. The best fight from each decade, right? And that's what we're going to look at today. And then I had a little piece on trainers yesterday we didn't get to. It was what are some traits of great trainers. And we're going to talk about talked about the best trainers of all time yesterday. We're going to talk about some of the top active trainers today, you know, like the current reigning trainer of the year, Robert Garcia. Yeah, Robert Garcia won it for 2024 trainer of the year. He had Rayo become the champion. He's since lost it, but he did become the champion in 2024 when he beat Pitbull, remember? Pitbull. Virgil Ortiz, I think he became the interim champion at 154. So yeah, Robert was the trainer of the year. We're going to cover him and some of the other current great trainers. But first, for the highlights of boxing history today, we got 10 of the best boxing rematches that never happened. Okay, excuse me. We're going to look at some great fights that the fans clamored for a rematch, but we never got them, you know, in boxing history. 10 of the best rematches that never happened. Remember a couple weeks ago, I think it was last week, we went over the top 10 rematches that happened in our highlights of boxing history. So today, 10 of the top boxing rematches that never happened. Okay? Highlights of boxing history today. How's everybody? It's hump day. We are officially halfway through the work week. But I'm on permanent weekend status, okay? I don't work. I'm retired. Permanent weekend man. But the rest of y'all will be here with me in a couple more days. Hang in there. Okay? So let's talk about some of these great rematches that never happened. Okay? Appreciate everybody that's in the building. We have a few more people probably show up. You know, that's why we do this little boxing history. Wait until 2:30 to kick the show off. So let's talk about these rematches first. Highlights of boxing history. Did a little short on highlights of boxing history. Talked about Ray Arcel for like 30 seconds, but the views haven't got off. I haven't made it short in a long time. We'll see what happens with it. I'm looking for like 10,000 views. Get me shorts, get you subscribers. I'm stuck at 891. I need 109 to get to 1,000. And y'all know 109 people that can subscribe to me, get me to 1,000. Okay, let's talk about these rematches that never happened. Okay, it's just a memorable fight. How about that one for a memorable fight? The Thriller in Manila. That's definitely gonna get it for the decade of the '70s, hands down. What other fight could it be? That third fight that's thought up as the greatest fight of all time. But now it's very hard to break down a top 10 list because there have been many fights over the course of history that screamed for a rematch that never took place. Now, the reasons for some of these rematches to not take place have been so senseless that it's the fans that became the real losers. And can you imagine if Lexus Aguayo and Aaron Pryor never had their rematch? Fans would still be screaming to take a loss off Aguayo's record because Pryor and his sleazeball trainer, Panama Lewis, cheated their way to victory. That's what a lot of fans would be saying with the aid of the mystery bottle. But Pryor knew better and gave Aguayo the much-deserved rematch after an epic first fight. And Pryor proved he didn't need any extra help and dominated Aguayo in the rematch, knocking him down 3 times, including the decisive 10th round knockdown that saw Aguayo stay on the ground for the 10 count. I think Pryor had Emmanuel Lewis for the rematch, didn't he? Yeah. So yeah, fortunately he gave Aguayo the rematch and dominated him even worse than the first fight because people would still be screaming about that bottle if he had never gave him that rematch. And they may have took the loss off Aguayo's record, who knows? But let's talk about these rematches. 10 of the top rematches that never happened, okay? For whatever reason. Now, while Pryor and Aguayo got it right, here's 10 fights and fighters that didn't get it right by not signing for a rematch. Okay, here we go. The first one is Lennox Lewis and Vitaly Klitschko. Now, Vitaly Klitschko only had 2 losses in his career, and they both were because of injury. The fight was stopped, and both times he was ahead on all the cards. So he had got a good case where he could have been the second heavyweight after Rocky Marciano to retire undefeated because Lennox beat him on cuts, and Vladimir was ahead on all the cards when the fight was stopped. And I think the other one, the arm or something was injured. But anyway, they stopped the fight due to injury, and he was again ahead on all the cards. So both his losses were by injury, and he was winning both fights. But Lennox Lewis versus Vitaly Klitschko. Now, the first fight was over. We only had one. They didn't get the rematch, but the time they fought was on June 21st, 2003. Okay? June 21st, 2003. When these two squared off. Lennox Lewis, Vitaly Klitschko. Now, the first fight on the list was the last good heavyweight fight, right? It was one of the more exciting fights on the list, and it was not even supposed to happen in the first place. Lennox Lewis was scheduled to fight Kirk Johnson for the IBO championship belt, but he dropped it when Johnson suffered an injury in training. Instead, Lewis fought Klitschko, the WBC's #1 contender and former WBO champion, right? Now, Lewis had planned to fight Klitschko in December, but since Klitschko had been on the undercard of the Johnson, he was going to fight. See, this fight happened in June. Now, he was going to fight Klitschko after the Johnson fight in December of 2003. But when Johnson got injured, Klitschko was already on the undercard of Lewis Johnson, so he just moved Klitschko up to the main event, right? Now, Lewis entered the ring a little overweight as he came in at a career high of 256.5 pounds, right? Yeah, that was the biggest he ever came in at. Now, Lewis expected a walkthrough, but instead found himself in one of the toughest fights of his career. Now, Lewis was dominated in the early rounds and was wobbled bad in round 2 by 2 solid Klitschko punches. And looked many times in the second round that Klitschko might pull off the upset and stop Lennox early. because he had Lennox hurt bad in that second round. Now, Klitschko also hurt Lennox in the third round. Backed him up all night with his left jab. One of the best jabs in the business, by the way. And one of the jabs cut Lewis on the bridge of his nose. And Klitschko early in the fight was landing at will on Lennox, right? Was dominating him. Then in the third round, Lewis opened the cut that poured blood and looked like it would ultimately end Klitschko's dream of winning the title, which it eventually did. Now, Lewis gave a better showing in the fifth and sixth rounds. Now, before the start of round 7, with Vitaly Klitschko ahead on all 3 ringside scorecards, the doctor advised the referee to stop the fight due to the severe cut above Klitschko's left eye. And Lennox got a TKO victory with Klitschko ahead on all 3 cards. And Klitschko did earn the respect of fans that night because he dominated Lennox. And because Klitschko had fought so well against Lewis, boxing fans soon began calling for a rematch. And the WBC agreed, who kept Vitaly as their number 1 contender. But Lennox Lewis decided to pursue other interests and appeared not interested in looking bad once again. And Lewis said he would not return to the ring, and he ended up retiring. That was his last fight. He didn't want to get back in there with Vitaly. At his retirement, Lewis's record was 41 wins, 2 losses, and 1 draw, with 32 wins by knockout. Okay. And Klitschko only lost 2 fights also. And both of them, like I said, they were both by cuts. Lennox, what was that knockout rate? I gotta know. 41 wins 30. That's 78. Not bad. Okay, let's go to the next one. But yeah, Lewis 4,500 in the building. Salute, Lewis 4,500. Good to see you. We're just going over right now a little highlights of boxing history segment. Some rematches that never happened. Okay, the first one was Lennox Lewis and Vitaly Klitschko. And they should have had a rematch because the fight was stopped on cuts, and Lewis got the TKO victory on cuts over Vitaly, but Vitaly was dominating the fight and ahead on all 3 cards at the time of the stoppage, and everybody thought we should have had a rematch. But Lennox decided to retire instead. Never got the rematch. The next one, rematches that never happened, was Michael Spinks versus the white Muhammad Quali. Okay, this fight happened in March 8, well, the fight happened in March 18th, 1983. The one they did have. Okay. Now, they called this fight the Brawl for It All. And it was one of the more important fights in history at the time, right? It was made because it was the Unified Light Heavyweight Championship, right? We only had the WBA and WBC at the time. I think the IBF was around, but they still were only recognizing the big 2 right then. One of them had the WBA, the other had the WBC. I don't know which was which, but it was for the Unified Light Heavyweight Championship. There was a long-awaited fight for the sport. Quali had defeated Matthew Saad Muhammad. Yeah, Quali had the WBC. He beat Matthew Saad Muhammad for the WBC, so obviously Spinks had the WBA, right? And Quali had defeated some of the top names in boxing in the light heavyweight division to get this fight with Spinks. Now, on the other side, Spinks had become a superstar in the boxing world, right? He began appearing on the covers of boxing magazines, and boxing fans started clamoring for this unification fight. And the fight would not come without some dramatic happenings before it ever took place. Now, 2 months before the fight was supposed to take place, Spinks' longtime girlfriend, who was the mother of his daughter, had died in a car accident. And on the other side, about 7 days before the fight, Quali revealed that his doctors had recommended him not to fight. Quali had been diagnosed with pneumonia, right? So this put the fight in jeopardy. But Quali decided to go on with the fight, right? So Spinks had 2 months before the fight, the mother of his child had died, and Quali's doctors was recommending him not even take the fight because he was diagnosed with pneumonia. But they decided to have it, right? Now, Spinks had a very tough moment to overcome before the fight even started. His daughter asked him in the dressing room before the fight that night. His daughter asked him if her mother would come to watch the fight. This is the lady that got killed in a car accident 2 months before. And Spinks had to deal with that in his mind going to the ring. His daughter asked him if her mother, who had died in a car accident, was coming to watch the fight. Wow. And Spinks almost broke into tears. But he had to recover and go to the ring, right? Talk about some drama. But, hey, the fight must go on, you know? That was right there in the dressing room before the fight. Now, Mike Rim in the building. What's up, Mike Rim? Isn't that deep, though, man? Wow, your daughter asked you a question like that, you got to get ready to go in there, one of the toughest sports of them all, boxing. And Spinks almost broke down. But this was in the dressing room right before his ring walk. Okay, so the fight went on. Now, Spinks started the fight taking an outside tactical style, while Quarry did his usual charge forward style. Quarry had that Joe Frazier bob and weave that's come forward style because he was short, and he had to fight on the inside because Quarry wasn't going to beat nobody fighting outside that range. You know, I think he was like 5'7", 5'8" or something. And Spinks was like 6'2". So Quarry did his usual charging forward style. Now, the first 6 rounds, including the judges, was dominated by Spinks, right? Because they had Spinks ahead through the first 6 rounds. But in round 8, Quarry was finally gaining some momentum as he was credited with a controversial knockdown of Spinks. Now, Spinks stepped on one of Quarry's feet. Quarry landed a right to Spinks' chin. Now, had Spinks not landed on Quarry's foot, he probably wouldn't have went down. But Quarry got credited with the knockdown. But Quarry slowed down a little bit after that, probably because of his sickness, right? And it was because it was getting up into the fight, and the man was diagnosed with pneumonia. But it didn't show much until the championship rounds, 14 and 15. It was 15 rounds then. Now, he did stagger Spinks with 2 right hands towards the end of round 14, but he could not finish him up as the bell rang to save Spinks. Now, Quarry came out swinging from every angle at the start of round 15, the last round, as he knew he would need a knockdown, right? Spinks had recovered and won most of the middle and late rounds and was well ahead by that point. However, Spinks bobbed and weaved throughout the last round and got himself a well-deserved victory. And the judges scored the fight: 144-140, 144-141, and 144-141. So going into 15, Quarry clearly needed a knockout, okay, or a couple knockdowns or something, right? Now, the closeness of the decision made fans begging for a rematch. And the rematch came very close to happening, as it was set for September 27th, the next year, 1984, right? Actually had it set up and everything. However, it was canceled after Quarry was injured during training 3 weeks before the fight. And in typical boxing fashion, they never settled on another rematch after that. Actually had the rematch signed, but it never happened. Okay. Next rematch that never happened was Nigel Benn versus Gerald McClellan. Oh, well, what did I just do? I'm always doing something. Nigel Benn versus Gerald McClellan. It's still Spinks and Quarry. There's Nigel Benn and Gerald McClellan right there. Right? There's Ben on the left and McClellan on the right. Now, this was tragic, this fight here. Now, this fight they did have happen on February 25th, 1995. Okay? February 25th, 1995. Now, yeah, this highlights the boxing history. We're going to run a little past 2:30, but we're going to get it all in because the memorable fight is not going to take us no hour and a half. So, yeah, we got plenty of time. We are good. Because, the highlights of boxing history is usually 2 to 2:30. We're going to run a little longer today by design. Okay. Now, Nigel Benn versus Gerald McClellan. possibly one of the more gruesome fights in boxing history. This is a fight that is the subject of a documentary directed by Bobby Razak called Fallen Soldier. It was perhaps one of the biggest and most memorable fights to take place in England. Now, what took place that night was a boxer's greatest victory and another boxer's sad end to a career. Now, Nigel Benn and Gerald McClellan came into the fight as two of the top middleweights in the world. There was not a harder puncher in the division than Nigel Benn. Now, McClellan was the WBC middleweight champion and successfully defended it 3 times before moving up to super middleweight to challenge Benn. Now, the fight started with a bang as McClellan dropped Benn, who went out of the ring in the very first round, right? Now, McClellan, after dropping Benn again in the 8th round, slumped to one knee in the 10th round. Now, he stayed down to the 8 count, resumed boxing, but almost immediately dropped to his knee for a second time, obviously as a result of some extreme discomfort. He stayed on one knee and was counted out, okay? He returned to his corner, where he lost consciousness within a short time. Something was definitely not right with him, okay? So what happened after that would change the lives of many. McClellan had emergency surgery to remove a blood clot from his brain. He spent 11 days in a coma, and after which he was found to have suffered extensive brain damage. He lost his eyesight, the ability to walk unassisted, and became 80% deaf. So imagine that, man. That's almost like being dead, right? You're blind and 80% deaf. Woo, that had to be tough. Wow. Meanwhile, Nigel Benn was never the same after that fight. He would eventually lose the title and failed twice to regain it in rematches against Steve Collins. Right? Now, a rematch of this fight was just physically impossible. And that was a shame. Right? Yeah, that was a tragedy too, yeah. After that, man. But blind and 80% deaf. I can't even imagine that. Wow. Next one is Larry Holmes versus Ken Norton. They fought on June 9th, 1978, a barn burner. You like old fights? This is one to watch. Larry Holmes, Ken Norton, June 9th, 1978. Okay. All right. Larry Holmes, Ken Norton. In one of the best heavyweight fights in the last 40, 50 years, right? Norton and Holmes took themselves to the limit in an epic 15-round slugfest. 15 rounds then too. Now, Norton came in as a WBC champion, right? And Holmes was the #1 contender. And Norton was the champion because he was the third. Well, Holmes won this fight, ended up being the 4th WBC champion in 4 months because Ali started out as the champion and he was beaten by Leon Spinks, became the 2nd one. And then the WBC, Ken Norton was the #1 contender, and the WBC stripped Spinks because he decided to fight Ali rematch instead of fighting Norton. You know, he had just beat Ali, and then the rematch with Ali was much more lucrative for Spinks, no brainer. So then Spinks and Holmes fought for the WBC, and Holmes beat Spinks to become the 4th WBC champion in 4 months, in a 4-month period in 1978. That's crazy. Now, Norton came in as the WBC champion, and Holmes was the #1 contender. It was a dead-even fight until the 15th and final round. What would happen is one of the most exciting rounds that ends to a fight in boxing history in any weight class. At the end of the 15th and final round, Holmes was awarded the title by extremely close split decision. 2 judges awarded the round and the fight to Holmes. The 3rd gave the round to Ken Norton. Great fight. Great fight. Like old fights, that's the one to watch. In 1978, June 9th, Holmes versus Spinks. Now, what might have swayed the judges was the last 15 seconds of round 15 as Norton seemed to have the round won. But he tired out real bad in the last few seconds, and Holmes landed some great shots that rocked Norton and almost got him out of there. At the very end of the round, and that's probably what won Holmes the round and the fight. And then what should have immediately been a no-brainer immediate rematch. It was not to be. Holmes went to defend the heavyweight title in one of the great runs as champion ever. He was successfully defended 20 times and is considered one of the most dominant reigns any champion ever had, but never fought Norton again. Meanwhile, Ken Norton did not get his much deserved rematch and would fight 5 more times after that fight with Holmes. He was never the same and would lose 2 of those fights, and the final being a first round knockout loss to gentleman Jerry Cooney that would end Norton's career. Now, it would have been nice to see the rematch between these two because of how great a fight the first one was and how dominant Holmes would end up becoming. Norton seemed like the only fighter at the time to give Holmes a run for his money. Yeah, Ken Norton. Did he give him a run for his money? Okay. The next one that should have got a rematch was The War. Marvin Hagler versus Thomas the Hitman Hearns. April 15th, 1985. Yeah, that should have definitely got a rematch on that one, but we didn't. Okay. Let's look at it. When you think of this fight, you think of the fight. When you think of this fight, you think of the most violent and most exciting 3-round fight in boxing history. Hagler and Hearns met in what was billed as the fight, but after the fight, it was changed to The War, right? Yeah. Hearns, who was expected to box and take advantage of his superior reach, stood toe-to-toe with Hagler right at the sound of the first bell in round 1. He did try to start out boxing, but Hagler didn't let him, okay? Hagler just got in his chest and said, "You're going to stand here and brawl with me," and that's what they did. Both men fought at a brutal pace and fought as if it was a street fight. The crowd giving a standing ovation as the bell sounded to end. This was just the first round, okay? Standing ovation. And Hearns broke his right hand, that devastating right hand, in the first round. The Hagler, who was pressing for such an exchange, seemed fine to fight on the inside. Now, both fighters landed powerful punches the next 2 rounds, but Hagler appeared to have the advantage with his more solid chin, right? Now, in round 3, Hagler would manage to overpower Hearns and score a devastating knockout of the tired Hearns and would earn himself one of his biggest wins of his career. It elevated both champions to superstar status, and a rematch seemed inevitable. And Hagler was badly cut too, and he felt a sense of urgency because he was the doctor had looked at it right in round 3, and Hagler felt a sense of urgency. He didn't want the fight stopped or cut, right? And he got Hearns out of there. And a rematch seemed inevitable for this fight. However, it was not to be, as Hagler would not last long enough in the game, as he would fight only 2 more times and would retire following the Sugar Ray Leonard fight. Hagler fought the Beast and Sugar Ray and that was it after Hearns. And he retired after Sugar Ray. Now, it would have been interesting to see if these two fought again, how different it would be. Would it be another brawl like that, or would Hearns be able to box and use his boxing talent and use the ring more against Hagler? Now, would Thomas Hearns take a different approach? We will never know. We will never know. How about a rematch on this one? Buster Douglas and Mike Tyson. But Buster Douglas only had that one of those fights then, because they say he went up to almost 400 pounds in between Tyson and Holyfield. So Tyson would have likely knocked him out in 1 or 2 rounds in the rematch, because Buster didn't take it serious. He took this one fight serious, but he only had one in him. But let's talk about it. This fight happened on February 11th, 1990. Yeah. Now, it would be known as the biggest upset in not only boxing history, but the history of all sports as well. Tyson was the undefeated and undisputed heavyweight champion and came into this fight as, get this, a 40-1 favorite. 40-1 favorite over Douglas. Somebody bet the right money on Douglas, come out as a millionaire. 40-1 odds, man. Now, it should have been one of the easiest fights in Tyson's career. But Douglas was at an emotional high after losing his mother just a few weeks prior to the fight, and he fought the fight of his life. Yep, yes he did. And Tyson failed to find a way past Douglas's quick jab. And Douglas had a huge reach advantage, and he was not intimidated. That jab was beautiful, man. He was changing speeds on it. You know, he was changing levels on it. Buster was not intimidated. And when Mike tried to get in past that jab, Buster had that right hand waiting on it. It was beautiful, man. But we never saw that Buster Douglas again. Now, Tyson did send Douglas to the floor in a controversial knockdown in the 8th round, catching him with an uppercut. In Tyson's corner, and Don King tried to say the count was slow, and that Douglas had taken longer than 10 seconds to get to his feet. Now, Douglas would come back from the knockdown, and 35 seconds into the 10th round, Douglas unleashed a brutal combination of hooks that sent Tyson to the canvas for the first time in his career. And Tyson would not make it, would not beat the count, and Douglas became the new heavyweight champion of the world. But, as we know by now, Tyson would never get the redemption he needed over Douglas. Both men's lives and careers took two different turns. Douglas' reign as champion was very short-lived. He made his only defense of the heavyweight title later that same year, in 1990, in the fall against Evander Holyfield, and Douglas was knocked out in the 3rd round, and afterwards would retire from boxing, right? He would make a brief comeback in the late 90s, but it was short-lived and unsuccessful. Yeah. With Tyson, we all know what happened to him. It's too bad that Mike, you know, the rape thing and all that, but it's too bad that Mike never got to redeem himself from his worst night ever as a boxer. There's no doubt that Mike would have gone back to the old Mike and floored Douglas in the 1st round. No doubt about it, man. Yeah, he would have got him in 1st or 2nd round. It would have been over. It should have happened the 1st time. It would have happened the 2nd time for sure. It would have been a great sight to see Mike redeem himself against Buster, but it just never happened, right? Never happened. Okay. Let's go to the next one. So yeah, I told you this boxing history is going to go past 2:30. It's actually part of the main show now. So the next one is Big George Foreman and Muhammad Ali. Yeah, we should have got a rematch on that one. When Ali upset the world again, 10 years after he did it the 1st time. Against Liston, remember? Two big, strong, scary guys. Ali knocked both of them out. But Liston, we did get a rematch on that one. But this one we didn't. Ali and Foreman. There they are. There's Kensaw Love One coming in, bearing gifts. And Jarrell Hattie. Salute Kensaw Love One and Jarrell Hattie in the building. We're talking about some rematches that never happened. Okay? And salute to Jarrell Hattie. Okay, let me, I gotta show my appreciation for Kensaw Love One Super Chat. These are the people that's here live in the studio with me right here. Okay? These people are here live in the studio with me. Appreciate the super chat, Kensaw Love One. Yeah, that's my live studio audience right there. They're sitting right over there watching the show. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Ali and Foreman. Salute Kensaw Love One and Jarrell. Yeah, it was Mike Wim says it was a power jet. Yes, it was, Mike. Beautiful, wasn't it? And now, Mike, that Buster Douglas would have beat Holyfield, but we never saw that Buster Douglas. If that same Buster Douglas would have showed up Holyfield later that year, he would have beat Holyfield, might have stopped him. But man, that Buster Douglas would have been a problem in the heavyweight division. But like I said, we never saw him again. But Ali Foreman, we never got a rematch on that one neither. This fight happened on October 30th, 1974, right? The Rumble in the Jungle. One of the most famous fights to take place in boxing history, probably right behind the Thriller in Manila, Frazier and Ali. Now, Frazier came as the dominant champion, who disposed of Ali foes Ken Norton and Joe Frazier, in easy fashion, with knockouts of both of them. Now, Ali had struggled and went the distance with each guy, right? Had lost to both of them at that point, because Norton won the first fight and Frazier won the first fight, remember? Now, almost no one gave Ali a chance of winning, not even his own team, right? I didn't. I certainly didn't. I wanted Ali to back out of the fight, We thought he might lose his life in there against this big monster. Because, he was like, Ali, you can't do it again. Like, you was young, fresh out the gate against Liston, and now you done had that 3-year layoff. No, let George Foreman have the title. But Ali was not the greatest of all time for nothing, right? He would employ one of the great in-fight strategies of all time, the old rope-a-dope. Ali's tactic of leaning on the ropes, covering up, and absorbing ineffective body shots was known as the rope-a-dope. Clearly, Ali knew that Foreman just never went the distance in any of his fights, right? Foreman had won 37 of his 40 fights by knockout, mostly within the first 3 rounds. 8 of his previous fights didn't go past the second round. So Ali saw something in that, right? And in the 8th round, Ali dropped Foreman with a combination of at center ring, and Foreman failed to make the count. Against all odds, Ali had regained the title. That was the biggest upset before Buster Douglas and Mike Tyson. Now, with Foreman being the champion at the time, he should have been given a rematch because of how dominating he had been before that fight, right? However, Foreman and Ali became friends after the fight, and the rematch never took place. Ali seemed destined to settle the score with Joe Frazier for the 3rd and final time. Meanwhile, Foreman took a 1.5 years off, fought a few more times, and then retired after losing his 2nd fight to Jimmy Young. And then Foreman would become born again and would not return to the ring for another 10 years and gave one of the most inspiring boxing comebacks ever. But the Rumble in the Jungle was one of the great boxing events of our time. And the way it turned out, it would have been nice to see these two go at it one more time. And yes, a lot of people say Foreman would have been the second one, but no. Ali would have had something for him just like he had something for him the first time and had something for everybody. I think Ali would have beat him the second fight too because he was the greatest, man. Yeah, he would have beaten him the second fight. How about this one? We didn't get a rematch for this. Was a big one here. We didn't get a rematch. Oscar and Tito. Oscar De La Hoya and Felix Trinidad. Never got the rematch for that one. Nope. Okay, yeah, we winding down on this, and then we're going to get to the most memorable fights. But it's all going to work out. Trust me. Okay. Now, yeah, Oscar De La Hoya versus Felix Trinidad. They fought on September the 8th, 1999. Right? In the fight they actually had. Now, at that time, it was one of the biggest events in pay-per-view history. Oscar De La Hoya defended his WBC title against rival and IBF champion Felix Trinidad. It was a unification. It set the record for a non-heavyweight fight in terms of sales. And the way this fight was hyped, you thought it was going to be one of the greatest fights we will ever see. Instead, we got one of the most controversial fights on this list, right? There was not a whole lot of excitement and brawling in the fight, Oscar seemed to have total control of the fight for the first 9 rounds, but I'm going to tell you what happened. Of the fight, Oscar controlled the outside and was seemingly putting on a boxing clinic to the rest of the world. Now, thinking that they had an advantage on points, Oscar's corner urged him to be conservative, took his foot off the gas, a strategy that benefited Tito Trinidad, who became more active. In the offensive, connecting several solid combinations, right? Tito became more active, right, on offense. And he started landing combinations on Oscar. Now, both guys continued this pattern into the 12th and final round, with Oscar trying to slow down the offense while displaying signs of exhaustion, as Tito continued to hunt him and take control. And Oscar slowed down by design. His corner told him to. What kind of nonsense is that? He had the fight won. After the final bell sounded, Oscar celebrated as he was sure he had won the fight. Biggest fight of his career to that point. But that is when the controversy comes in. I still thought Oscar had won it. But if he hadn't took his feet off the gas, he would have won it in the judges' eyes too. Now the scorecards had Tito slightly ahead, even though Tito threw only 20 punches more than Oscar in round 12. One of the judges gave it to Oscar. It just did not add up. Tito Trinidad was given a majority decision win, and Oscar had his first loss of his career. With that, we had ourselves one of the great boxing robberies of our time, and perfect setup for a rematch. And when you watch this fight, you can easily tell that Oscar was the superior fighter. Even if he had ran away the final 3 rounds, he should have won enough early on to basically nullify those final 3 rounds, right? And the judges' scorecards came under question, and fans and boxing analysts called for a rematch. This is one of the fights that screamed rematch, but because Trinidad was promoted by Don King and Oscar by Bob Arum, it had no chance of ever happening. Why not? The first one happened. Now, money and other politics came into play. We will never know what might have happened. Oscar should have had the right to a rematch. And he definitely would have fought completely different. It is one of the great regrets of his career, and it kills that he could never redeem himself. Never got the chance. Julio Cesar Chavez and Pernell Whitaker. Tim Layton says, my dad took time to meet Ali when Tim was 12. Got to shake his hand. All right. Tim got to shake Ali's hand at 12. Yeah. Okay, Tim. Tim Layton. Okay. Yeah. Julio Cesar Chavez and Pernell Whitaker. This fight took place September 10th, 1993. Okay. It's September 10th, 1993. This one took place. Let me see here. There we go. Okay. Here. Okay. Now, Julio Cesar Chavez and Sweepy. If you thought the previous fight on this list was a robbery, this one might have been the biggest robbery of all time. The great Chavez came into the fight undefeated with an astonishing record of 87 wins and no losses. 87-0 came into this fight, right? Now, Chavez moved up one weight division to challenge Sweepy for the WBC welterweight title. This was Chavez's first fight in the division. He had just come up from junior welterweight, right? So, throughout the fight, Chavez was outboxed by the slick Whitaker, who used lateral movement and a quick jab to keep Chavez at bay. That's why, like the great Ant McQueen said, when people always say they don't have the pop to keep them off, pop is not the only thing that can keep a person off. Chavez was a great pressure fighter, but Sweepy kept him off with lateral movement and a quick jab, okay? Didn't have to use pop. Lateral movement and a quick jab, okay? Now, it was quite shocking to see the great Chavez being schooled like a child, as Sweet Pea used his awesome boxing skills to totally frustrate Chavez. Now, the fight got to a point where Chavez was so down on the cards that there was no point to continue scoring. Chavez might have been lucky if he had landed 2 or 3 punches the entire fight. Now, the result of the fight was a controversial majority draw, with just one judge ruling in favor of Whitaker, allowing Chavez to remain undefeated. Yeah, they was marketing that back then. Even though the fight was ruled a draw, it's pretty obvious that an extra effort was taken to keep Chavez undefeated. Okay? It's sad to say, but Pernell Whitaker was also a victim of circumstances. He was fighting for the Don King belt, WBC, in Texas with a Mexican fighter. Now, various members of the American media, including Sports Illustrated, were critical of the decision. And Sports Illustrated put Pernell Whitaker on the cover of the next magazine with a one-word title, Robbed. Yeah, I should have put that up, but I'm sorry. Robbed. Of course, there was no rematch, and Pernell has had to live with being involved in one of the biggest robberies in boxing history. Now, of course, Don King was not going to allow for Chavez to go through that fight again, right? And he wanted Chavez to have no part of Whitaker. Whitaker deserved the win, and in the least deserved the rematch. Of course, it is boxing, and promoters don't like to give robbed fighters rematches, right? It's shame. But that's boxing, okay? And this one, Marvin Hagler, Sugar Ray Leonard. Sugar Ray Leonard ducked the rematch, okay? Ray Patterson, straight out of New Jersey. What's up, RP? Talking about some great rematches of all time. Sugar Ray Leonard clearly ducked this rematch, okay? After the Marvin Hagler, Sugar Ray Leonard fight, Sugar Ray Leonard retired, okay? Hagler waited 15 months, a year and 3 months, trying to coach Sugar Ray Leonard out of retirement. Sugar Ray Leonard was adamant about he was retired. So after 15 months, Hagler gave up and retired. And guess who comes out of retirement 1 month later? Sugar Ray Leonard. Textbook duck. We want to know no more a part of Hagler. Took everything he had to win that fight, and he still didn't win it, okay? And ducked the rematch. But let's talk about it. We never had the rematch. This is the final one. We're going to talk about some memorable fights. What's up, RP? How are you today, bro? Okay. The fight happened on April 7th, 1987. Yeah. Now, perhaps the most talked about and most debated fight in the history of the sport. It is a fight that boxing fans still argue to this day, right now. Was Hagler robbed? Because if Coach Tommy was in there, he would have in the chat Sugar Ray won. And me and him would be debating it. I think Hagler won. So people argue about this fight to this day, right? Was Hagler robbed? Or did Leonard really win? Only 30 seconds of every round, right? Yeah, Sugar Ray came on. He told Angelo Dundee to hot scream to him when there was 30 seconds left in every round. And he stole a lot of rounds that way. And there was a fight that was many years in the making. Leonard shocked the sports world once again when he announced he would return to the ring for this fight. You know, after 5 years, no tune-up or nothing, he came straight in and fought Hagler. So it was really a big accomplishment just to be as competitive as he was, you know. Now, this announcement generated a lot of controversy because of Leonard's inactivity and eye injuries. Yet, it also excited many sports fans who had wanted to see this match for years. Yeah, I was one of them. Shut up, phone. Man, come on, what the hell is wrong with this thing? I'm not even bothering it. I'm not even using it. Okay. Yeah, many fans wanted to see this fight for years, including myself, right? So, the fight was billed as super fight, and it had Hagler agreed to a 12-round limit, because they were still fighting 15 and 12 then, right? Because he was so confident he was going to take care of Ray. And that decision was ultimately haunt Hagler. And Hagler was a heavy favorite, and why not? Now, Leonard had only fought once in 5 years, and had never fought as a middleweight before. But Hagler was only fighting his third fight in 2.5 years also, right? And if issues of being rusty was sure to come up for both of them. So Leonard used the same tactics as he did in his other big fight, lateral movement, jabs, and clinching when he was in trouble. The Hagler had trouble keeping up with the fleet-footed Leonard. And guess what else Hagler did? Hagler fought the first 2 rounds as an orthodox, something he never did, right? And it cost him. He lost both of those rounds. Unc Dre Finest. What's up, Unc Dre? Unc Dre Finest is in the building. Good to see you, bro. Yeah. I'll see you in a minute. Okay. Good to see you. Here we talking about some rematches that never happened, Dre. This is the final one. Hagler and Leonard. Yeah. Leonard ducked this rematch. I thought Hagler beat him in the first place, too. But let's continue. Let's salute Unc Dre Finest in the building. Oh, now I done hit something and lost my whole display, but it'll be back. It's back. Yeah, Hagler had trouble keeping up with Leonard. And the whole thing going haywire. Give me a minute. This is the last one. Something happens every day, but at least we got to the last one before it happened today. Then we're going to talk about some of the most memorable fights from every decade, except the one we're in. We're going to start with the 2010s. We're halfway through this. We had some pretty memorable fights in this decade, too. How about those 2 we just had at light heavyweight? Beterbiev and Bivol, those 2 fights, man. Both of those, man. I think we're getting a trilogy on that one, too. Got my fingers crossed. Have they agreed to the trilogy? Yeah. That fight has trilogy written all over it. Undisputed. Each of them won 1. I think both were split decisions, right? So, yeah. Okay, let's get back to Hagler and Leonard. Don't do that again. I'm talking to the phone like it's a child or something. Yeah, Hagler had trouble keeping up with Leonard. But in general, Hagler landed the harder blows and Leonard landed more punches and the flashier ones. Now, neither fighter was knocked down during the fight. It seemed part of Leonard's strategy was to hold as much as possible. He was warned repeatedly for holding by the referee, but he never had any points deducted. At the end of the fight, it was Sugar Ray Leonard who won the controversial split decision. And this decision still remains a subject of debate to this day. And some of whom felt Hagler landed the hardest shots and controlled the pace of the fight from the 4th round on, right? From the 4th round on. But it was Leonard's plan to steal rounds with a few flurries and carefully timed flurries, right? Flashy and carefully timed flurries. What he didn't have for power, he made up for in hand speed. And Leonard said after the fight, he told Angelo Dundee when they got to 30 seconds left in every round to holler it out to him. That's when he went into action, and he stole a lot of rounds that way. Even if Leonard was not hurting Hagler, he was being more active. And that was what the judges like to see, right? Final punch stats show that Leonard landed 306 punches, while Hagler landed 291. That was close, right? 12 rounds, only, was there 15 punch difference? That's almost like just a little over, like 2 punches a round of difference. That's close, right? Now, it was that close of a fight. A rematch was something that should have came considering how close this fight was, right? Hagler thought his decision to lose to Leonard was unjust, saying he was tired of the backroom politics of the sport. Hagler was as bitter as anyone could be, and he had many writers and fans argue his point, right? And after that fight, Hagler walked away. Took home $37 million from this fight. Wow. That was 1987, $37 million, right? Almost 40 years ago. What would $37 million be today? Now, Hagler should have fought Leonard again, but he really felt a rematch was something that should have came considering how close the fight really was, right? Yeah, they should have had that rematch. And Hagler is possibly the greatest middleweight ever. And it's a shame he ended his career the way he did, right? Okay, let's look at some of these most memorable. I had trouble with that word. Memorable. Yes. This is some of the most memorable fights of all time, and most memorable fight from every decade for the past century, except for the one we're in now, 2020s. We're only halfway through this one. We might get some more that's more memorable in the last 5 years of the decade. So we'll wait till 2030 to do this, okay? So I'll see y'all in 2030. Talk about the 2020. So we're going to do 1910 to the 2010. So, okay? How's everybody today? It's hump day. Beautiful outside, man. I stepped out there. I said, I'm still in Baltimore. Man. Okay. And we're ready. Okay, let's talk about these most memorable fights from each decade of the past century. Now, great prize fights retain a sense of immediacy and drama, even many years after they happened, right? Decades later, fans who were not even born when some of these fights happened, right? Like Muhammad Ali, Phantom Punch against Sonny Liston, or the Jack Dempsey, Gene Punny long count. None of us was born when that happened. That was 1927. I don't think. I mean, could it be? Would you be 98, right? Yeah. So somebody might have been. I wasn't. I ain't that old. Now, great prize fights passed into the realm of myth as well. With the Thriller in Manila, Ali and Joe Frazier became Hector and Achilles for the 20th century. Joe Louis's dramatic round one knockout of German Max Schmeling on the eve of World War II made the Brown Bomber an instant folk hero. Now, reducing all the great fights of the past century to one most memorable per decade is a challenge, right? And a lot of these fights seem like obvious choices. So let's look at it. We're going to go from the 2010s and go backwards, okay? So 2010 to 2020. Well, to the present, really, because we don't have any for this decade we're in. How come nothing ain't happening? Uh-oh, I hope we ain't get ready to go off. I think I was going the wrong way. There we go. Okay, yeah. 2010 to 2020 is Juan Manuel Marquez versus Manny Pacquiao. See Manny laying there? Let me move that comment out the way. Move Tim's comment so we can see Manny more clearly. See? Yeah. Manny, man. Whew. I thought he had killed Manny. Look at him. He was motionless. Wife in the audience crying type of knockdown, man. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about this fight. This is the most memorable fight between 2010 and 2020. Okay. Now, Juan Manuel Marquez versus Manny Pacquiao is the most important boxing rivalry of the century that we're in right now, 21st, right? The first three fights were razor-close affairs, with none of them yielding a clear winner, right? The first fight was a draw, right? And the second was a split decision win for Pacquiao. The third fight also went to Pacquiao by majority decision, so it was perhaps the most criticized decision of the three. So we had a draw, a split decision, and a majority decision. And BoxRec introduced this 56 media members going to fight for Marquez, 51 for Pacquiao. and 36 for a draw, right? So it seemed reasonable to expect more of the same when the two legends met for a fourth time in December of 2012. After two relatively tentative rounds, Marquez began to work Pacquiao's body and used a feinted left hook to the body to set up an overhand right that dropped Pacquiao for the first time in their 4 fights together, right? But Pacquiao got up from that one. Now Marquez continued to land hard in the 4th, and he looked to be taking control of the fight. But Pacquiao came back strong in the 5th round, dropping Marquez with a left, right? With that famous straight left of his. Y'all know about that Manny Pacquiao straight left. He dropped Marquez with it, right? In the 5th round. Now both men traded solid power shots, but Marquez ended the 5th round with a broken nose and on wobbly legs from that Manny Pacquiao straight left. Round 6 was all Pacquiao until the very end. With just 1 second remaining in the round, Marquez lured Pacquiao forward and landed one of the great right-hand counters in the sport's history. Pacquiao tried that, he used to do that double jab. He would feint double jabs and hit you with the right. But Marquez ducked under that second feint and put that right-hand counter on Manny, knocked Manny out cold, right? And that was the first decisive win in all 4 of those fights in that rivalry, yeah. Yeah, Marquez had really studied Manny and did his homework. Manny tried that double jab feint, and Marquez ducked under that second one and came with that overhand right. Voodoo. Manny was out. See him? He's out. He's probably dreaming. His wife in the audience might be dreaming about his wife. And his son. His son is the boxer now too, Manny Pacquiao Jr. Remember, he'd always be sitting there by his mother. Yeah, he's in the amateurs now, Manny Pacquiao Jr. I was keeping track of it. I'll give y'all an update tomorrow. I'm gonna look at it, see what Manny Pacquiao Jr. is doing later today. Okay, from 2000 to 2009, the most memorable fight: Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Ricky Hatton. Is that Floyd? Oh no. But that's Ricky Hatton, so that's good enough. Y'all remember that check hook in that one, right? Okay, let's talk about this one. Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Ricky Hatton. Was that fight from 2000 to 2009. Now, Manny Pacquiao's round 2 knockout of Ricky Hatton was more spectacular. But Floyd Mayweather's earlier stoppage of the tough English star in December 2007 seems like the all-time more memorable fight, right? Both fighters were fresh off beating Oscar De La Hoya, and Hatton having just knocked out Mayweather's toughest opponent, Jose Luis Castillo, right? You hadn't knocked Castillo out, all the trouble Floyd had with him. And the British fans who traveled across the Atlantic came across that pond to cheer their man played a large role in making this such a major event. Yeah, they traveled with the hitman Ricky Hatton. Yeah. If Hatton could have fought on the moon, them British fans would have been up there. Would have been more British fans there than people from the moon. Yeah, they followed Ricky Hatton. Mm-hmm. So at times the MGM Grand seemed more like a soccer stadium in Manchester, England. Yeah, I told you about those British fans. Now Hatton's heart and bruising style made for an entertaining fight, but Floyd's pinpoint accuracy with his lead right and check hook punished Hatton all night long. 7 years later, Mayweather haters still complain about the way Mayweather used his elbows in close range during the fight, while his fans still hail his unbelievable accuracy and good control of distance. Hey, if the referee don't catch you, it ain't wrong, right? Referee don't catch you, it ain't wrong. So hey, Everybody does it. If you can get away with it, why not? The most memorable fight for the 90s. Evander Holyfield, Mike Tyson won. Not the bite fight, the first one. Not the bite fight, the first one. The bite fight was a memorable one too, though, remember? But this is the other one. And we got a TKO over Mike in the 11th round in this one, remember? Okay. Now, Evander Holyfield's first two fights with Riddick Bowe were probably better fights than this one, right? And the Holyfield-Tyson rematch, which was the bite fight, was certainly more memorable than this one. But the first fight between Tyson and Holyfield in 1996 was an exciting scrap. It has to be counted as one of the most memorable fights in boxing history. It was the night that the mystique of Iron Mike officially crashed the earth. No, that happened when Buster Douglas got it. But Holyfield did a number on it too. After coming out of prison in 1995, Tyson had stopped Peter McNeely, Buster Masters Jr., Frank Bruno, and Bruce Seldon in rapid success. He had gained a little bit of that mystique back, though, after he came out of prison. Now, the total number of rounds for all four fights was 8. Wow. 1, 2, 3, 4. What's that? 5 fights, 8 rounds. 4 fights, 8 rounds. That's an average of 2 rounds per fight. And by this time, Holyfield had been through 3 wars with Bowe, getting stopped in the last one. Holyfield lost a majority decision to former light heavyweight champion Michael Moorer and briefly retired with a heart condition. Now, in the mind of the average sports fan, Holyfield was destined to be destroyed by the still monstrous Mike Tyson. Instead, Holyfield instituted a rugged, brawling game plan and beat Tyson up, right? By the last round, looked like Holyfield was beating up on a little guy. Now, it would have been interesting to see what would have happened if this fight could have taken place 4 years earlier, right? It would have unquestionably been a better fight. Okay, the Holyfield TKO 11th round. For the 80s, we covered this one. You know, this was the same one that didn't get the rematch. Hearns and Hagler, we're gonna go right past it. Remember, for the 80s, the war. That was one of the fights that we covered. We thought should have had a rematch, right? The 2 of the 4 kings. This fight started out, I think it was called the fight. Ended up, they changed it to the war, right? Yeah, and most of the biggest fights of the 1980s involved some configuration of what sports writer George Kimball dubbed the 4 kings, right? Bob was Marvin Hagler, Sugar Ray Leonard. Second fight, Sugar Ray Leonard's first and second fight with Roberto Duran. His first fight with Thomas Hearns, along with Duran's 15-round war with Hagler, and Hearns' 2-round destruction of Duran. Were extremely memorable and historically important fights. But the most memorable one was Hagler and Hearns, okay? We talked about that in the rematches. So we're going to go to the 70s. And that's, you know what that one is, the Thriller in Manila. Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier. For the 70s. Now, the first fight between Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier, held 4 years earlier in 1971, had far more buildup than their third and final fight in 75. Ali had recently returned to the sport after a forced layoff of over 3 years due to his refusal to be drafted into the military during Vietnam. Frazier had risen in his place as a dominant heavyweight champion in his own right. Now, heading into the fight of the century, the first one, Ali and Frazier were both undefeated champions. The country was engulfed in political turmoil, and it hung over the fight as a subtext. Frazier standing over the downed Ali in round 15 is one of the most famous boxing photos of all time. But the third fight in 1975 was a kind of epic back and forth war that Hollywood tries to emulate with movies like Rocky. Yeah, the first fight was the most iconic, right? Biggest. But the third fight was the best in terms of just pure boxing, right? The Thriller in Manila is a kind of platonic ideal for a heavyweight prize fight. Both men were a bit past their prime for the fight, but nevertheless, they dug deep and achieved near immortal greatness one more time. Angelo Dundee had to convince Ali not to quit late in the fight. Eddie Futch was forced to make Joe Frazier quit after round 14 to protect his fighter from himself after both eyes had finally swollen shut during the 13th round. Joe Frazier was still trying to come back out and couldn't even see. And Ali had nothing left because he gave everything he had in 14 to try to get Frazier out of there, but Frazier just wouldn't go down. So Ali went over there at the end of 14 and told Angelo Dundee to cut his gloves off. But Angelo Dundee said, look at Frazier. He's not coming back out. So Frazier had waited a few minutes, he might have won the fight because Ali said he wasn't coming back out either. Okay? So that's probably the greatest fight of all time. The Thriller in Manila. Okay? For the 60s, Ali again. Sonny Liston. This would be the second one because Liston, this was the Phantom Punch fight, remember? Yeah, this was the Phantom Punch fight. Yeah. Excuse me for a minute. One moment. Yeah, where Liston went down, very first round. Nobody saw the punch. The fans in the front row didn't see it. The referee didn't see it. Even Ali and Liston didn't see it. Liston just went down. Okay. Yeah, let's talk about the Phantom Punch fight. Okay. A half century later, the rematch between Sonny Liston and Muhammad Ali remains one of the most talked about fights ever. The photo of an enraged Ali standing over Liston, here it is right there, yelling for him to stand up, is probably the most famous boxing poster in the world. Yeah. I still got a copy of that, matter of fact. Most people do. Now, whether or not Liston took a deliberate dive in May 1965 in Lewiston, Maine, or simply quit rather than risk being made a fool of again by Ali's blinding speed is impossible to know. But nobody, including Ali, seemed to think that Liston had been hit hard enough to put him down for a 10 count. Told you, Ali and Liston didn't see the punch either. Mm-hmm. Even the choice of venue for this fight was incredibly strange, right? And it serves as a high school hockey rink, right? It's impossible to imagine a less likely location for a heavyweight title fight, right? Less than 2,500 people were able to attend due to the limited seating at the venue. Lewiston native, Broadway star, and eventual Vegas icon, Robert Goulet, muffed the lyrics to the Star Spangled Banner before the fight. In the end, it wasn't much of a fight. In fact, it was barely any fight at all. But however unfortunate, it provided the most enduring and iconic moment in the sport during the 1960s. 1950s is one of my favorites. That's another good picture. Susie Q, Rocky Marciano, Jersey Joe Walcott. It's the most memorable fight from the 1950s. Bruce Gass says his father was at the Phantom Punch fight, okay? Our own Bruce Gass' father was at the Phantom Punch fight. Yep. Yeah, salute Bruce Gass. Yeah, I think they told me that before. Yeah, Bruce Gass' father was there in 1965. Now this one, 1950s, Rocky Marciano and Jersey Joe Walcott. Look at that hook, man. Put Jersey Joe lips up under his ear. And Jersey Joe was winning on all three cards at that point. He had to fight one. It was 15 rounds. And all he had to do was be on his feet at the end of 15. But Rocky had that kind of power, fight-changing power, where any moment one punch could change things. And Suzy Q did right there. And Rocky threw everything for the home run, okay? Every punch Rocky threw was as hard as he could throw it. Okay, he got one in on Jersey Joe right there. Rocky never lost, and 49 wins, 43 knockouts. That's 87% knockout ratio, okay? So in 1951, Jersey Joe Walcott had become the oldest heavyweight champion ever when he beat Ezra Charles at the age of 37. In truth, Walcott probably should have become champion back in 1947 when he lost a highly controversial split decision to Joe Louis, in which he knocked the legendary champion down twice. So let's stop right there, because so many people always say, well, Rocky is overrated, he beat old men. But Jersey Joe Walcott beat Ezra Charles for the championship. So what was Rocky supposed to do? Say, well, I'm not going to fight for the title because he's old? So yeah, people need to stop that narrative. Jersey Joe Walcott was old, but he was the champion of the damn world, okay? So it wasn't nobody else beating him. So that cannot be no knock on Rocky. If he was so over the hill, why the hell was he the champion of the world, okay? So Rocky was not overrated. He beat the world champion, who just happened to be 37, who beat Ezra Charles for the championship, okay? So stop with the overrated talk. Jersey Joe Walcott was world champion. Rocky beat him. All right? What are we talking about here? So, yeah, Jersey Joe lost a highly controversial split decision to Joe Louis, in which he knocked the legendary champion down 2 times. They say, and Jersey Joe tried to say that when Joe Louis walked past him after the fight going to their corners, he said Joe Louis whispered to him, "You beat me." I don't believe that. Joe wouldn't have said that. He would have waited until the referee decision to say that. Crush the Legend in the building. What's up, Crush the Legend? We're just looking at some of the most memorable fights. Memorable fights of each decade. I gotta say it slow. But salute, Crush. Yeah, we're talking about Joe Louis and where we at, the 1950s? Yeah, Jersey Joe and Rocky Marciano. Everybody always say Rocky was overrated, but he beat the world champion. The man was 37, but he was world champion, right? So what was Rocky supposed to do? Wait until a younger man beat him, then fight for it? No, man. Hey, you got to take advantage of your opportunities. And Jersey Joe was winning through 13. He had to fight one. All he had to do was make it to the 15th round, but Suzy Q got through on it, see? Suzy Q looked like a hook. And like I say, Rocky threw everything hard. Every punch he threw hard. He was going for the knockout with every punch. And 49 fights, 43 of them were knockouts, right? And yeah, Jersey Joe was winning the fight through 12 rounds, right? Had it won, Rocky needed a knockout. And in round 13, Walcott looked to keep the pressure on Rocky and ended up walking right into one of the most famous right hands in boxing history. Marciano's dangerous Suzy Q, right? Marciano was suddenly the heavyweight champion, and his legend as a great comeback artist was secured. Yeah, The Rock. This one I always talk about here. Billy Conn was a dummy. 1940s. Joe Louis and Billy Conn. Let's talk about this one. I'll tell y'all about this one a lot. You Crush the Legend, Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Salute, Crush. Okay, 1940s. Joe Louis, Billy Conn. Now, this classic from 1941 came tantalizingly close to being one of the biggest upsets of all time, and seriously rewriting the entire history of the sport. Because Billy Conn almost beat Joe. Then we wouldn't have had those 25 straight title, record-setting straight title defenses, the 12-year record-setting title reign. None of that almost didn't happen. But Billy Conn was a dummy. Okay, listen. Trailing on 2 or 3 cards and even on the third. Trailing on 2 of them and even on the third, heavyweight champion Joe Louis came from behind in round 13 to knock out his challenger, the light heavyweight champion, Billy Conn. Louis had already written his ticket as an all-time great heavyweight champion by this point, having knocked out all 5 men to be champion before him. Now, Conn was a talented boxer with moxie, but a heavy underdog. The official weights for the fight were given as 199.5 pounds for Louis and 174 for Conn. Conn was the light heavyweight champion, and he came in as a light heavyweight, but was fighting for the heavyweight championship. But as this fight saga, the true weights were likely 204 for Louis and 169 for Conn, even less than 174. Now, Conn used his quicker reflexes and faster feet to move in and out of range and outscore Louis all fight long. But after Conn staggered Louis in round 12, he got greedy, came out in the 13th, and attempted to go toe-to-toe with one of the greatest finishers in boxing history, before or after that, right? And the outcome was disastrous for Conn. Knowing he needed a stoppage to win the fight, Joe Louis looked at this fool standing in front. I made that part up. Joe Louis seized the opportunity he was given and hammered Conn with the right hand. He staggered Conn, and then Joe Louis went into killer mode, and that was the end of it. The next right hand dropped. 2 seconds left in the round. Conn didn't get up. Okay? He staggered Joe Louis in round 12 and got greedy. Came out in 13 and stood toe-to-toe. And Joe Louis probably said, what is this fool doing? You know, Conn had to fight one. Joe Louis needed a knockout, right? Don't be a dummy. Okay, let's go to the 30. Billy Conn was a dummy, man. He had Joe Louis beat. That would still be talked about. This light heavyweight weighing 169 pounds came into the fight and beat the great legendary Brown Bomber. Joe Louis was already established as a legend at that time. Think about the storyline that would have had, man. Wow. Billy Conn, you blew it. Bad. Okay, we're at the 30s. Joe Louis and Max Schmeling. Joe Louis and Max Schmeling. Okay, there's Joe Louis and Max Schmeling right there. Just Do Boxing in the building. What's up, Just Do? Okay, Bruce says the fight, Ali and Liston in 60s was supposed to be in Boston originally. Okay, they ended up having it in that place in Lewiston, Maine. Yeah, which was usually used for a high school, what was a hockey rink, right? It was a high school hockey rink or something like that. Yeah, supposed to be in Boston. Okay. Yeah, the 20s was Joe Louis and 30s. Joe Louis and Max Schmeling was the most memorable fight for the 30s. I said it slow that time. Now, this was one of the most important sporting events in United States history. In 1938, with World War II quickly approaching, newly crowned heavyweight champion Joe Louis faced off with former champion Max Schmeling of Germany. Now, Max Schmeling wasn't a part of the Nazis, but since he was German, most fans associated him with the Nazis, right? Now, Schmeling was a decent man who would risk his own life to help Jewish people escape the Nazis during the war, and then keep the story largely hidden for decades out of personal modesty. But in 1938, he was Hitler's favorite fighter. Hitler wasn't his favorite, but he was Hitler's favorite, right? So that was out of Schmeling's control. 2 years earlier, Smelling had fought a tactically brilliant fight against Lewis and knocked Joe Louis out in the 12th round, right? Smelling had stopped him 2 years earlier. Hitler and the Nazi Party machine had pointed to this as proof that the Germans were a master race over everybody else, right? It was the Germans, the master race. Look what we just did to Joe Louis, okay? So as the rematch approached, the fight became much bigger than the sport itself. It became a battle between the racist ideals of the Germans and the democratic melting pot of the United States. For the first time in history, white Americans rallied around an African American athlete as our guy. Okay, in the fight, Lewis exploded all over Smelling and crushed him in less than a round. It was a great boxing victory, but beyond that, it was an important step toward the needed civil rights breakthrough that would follow in the second half of the century. And get this, the fight lasted a little over 2 minutes. 2 minutes in the first round. But Smelling stayed in the hospital for 2 months. That was a beating. Stayed in the hospital for a month per minute. Right? A 2-minute fight, this man was in the hospital for 2 months. I had a list of his injuries one time. I don't know where it's at. A list of his injuries, okay? To tell you how that was, a list of his injuries. Right? He had so many broken things. Well, let's go to the 20s. Which was Jack Dempsey and Gene Tunney. The second time. Gene Tunney beat him twice. This was the second one. Yeah, Gene Tunney beat Jack Dempsey 2 times. Okay? Now, just as the second fight between Muhammad Ali and Sonny Liston is still debated today, the rematch between Jack Dempsey and Gene Tunney also continued to inspire speculation and argument. Right. After using his jab and lateral movement to wrestle the crown from Dempsey a year earlier, Tunney was doing more of the same in the first 6 rounds of the 1927 rematch. Now, then in round, I just think move. I'm almost finished. Okay, there we go. I got it. Okay, where are we? Round. Yeah, Dempsey, Tunney was controlling the fight again, right? As he did in the first fight. But then in round 7, Tunney was controlling the fight again. In round 7, Dempsey connected with a big punch that he'd been looking for the entire fight, and he floored Tunney. Now, the new rule, this was the first fight this rule was done in, was in place in. The new rule required a fighter to retreat to a neutral corner. That's when the neutral corner rule had just started, while the ref counted to 10, because before then the fighter could stand right there beside the ref while he counted. But this new rule required a fighter to go to the neutral corner so the referee could start counting, right? Dempsey continued to stand right there over top of Tunney, right beside the referee, as was the normal habit, right? After knocking somebody down. And this violation delayed the ref's count. And there's little debate that Tunney was clearly on the canvas for longer than the count of 10. But what about the timekeeper count? I don't know. Did they do that in 1927? But the argument is whether or not Tunney stayed down that long because he was following the ref's count or was truly unable to get up. So you got to consider that too. He might not have been hurt that bad, but as long as the referee not counting, why get up? Get more recuperation, right? So, yeah. But, yeah, that's what happened. They call that the long count fight. And Tunney ultimately outboxed in the rest of the fight and got the decision. Beat Jack Dempsey a second time. In 1910 to 1919, this is the final one, I believe. Yeah, 1910 to 1919 was Jack Johnson and Jim Jeffries. There's Jack Johnson and Jim Jeffries. Okay, right there. We're gonna talk about some of the current trainers after this. And we talked about some of the top former trainers yesterday, so we're going to talk about some of the current active trainers, some of the top guys, including the reigning trainer of the year, Robert Garcia. Yeah, Robert Garcia won it this year. Mm-hmm. Now, Jack Johnson and James J. Jeffries. Now, while the reign of Joe Louis was a moment in which the United States made important progress in race relations, the country's reaction to Jack Johnson 40 years earlier was far less laudable. Now, boxing's first black heavyweight champion was met with shameful racist hostility by the white public, who recoiled in horror at the fact that a man with dark skin had claimed the title of the toughest man on the planet. And Jack Johnson didn't help it neither. He rubbed it in. You know, he had a big mouth and he was arrogant and all that. Yeah, so he didn't help. I mean, he still should have been able to fight for the title, but he didn't help. You know, he was just Jack. They made sure Joe Louis wasn't another Jack Johnson, but kind of like he went out of his way to provoke white America too. Now, a grown man has every right to live his life the way he wants to live it, and that's all Johnson really did, right? But it is accurate to say that Johnson made no effort to spare the feelings of racists with his own public behavior. He taunted white opponents and dated white women, even marrying one. At the turn of the 20th century, these were unfortunately unforgivable sins for many Americans. And the sporting republic became so desperate for a white champion, they dragged former champion James Jeffries out of retirement after 6 years. Jeffries had been a great champion during this time, but by 1910, he had grown fat on his farm. Jeffries managed to get himself into something like fighting condition for this fight, but his skills had long since grown rusty. It was one of the most anticipated fights of all time, with telegraph operators sending round by round updates across the country. It was filmed for later showing around the world. And despite the most avid wishes of racist America, Jeffries took a sustained beating before going down in round 15 of a scheduled 45-round fight. 45 rounds. Wow. Okay, let's talk about these some of these active trainers. We got time. Yeah. Some of the active trainers actively training fighters right now in boxing. Right? Like I said, Robert Garcia, the reigning trainer of the year. Okay. Equipment been malfunctioning today. So please just work for 20 more minutes. There we go. There we go. Okay, I got it. Now, who is the best trainer in boxing today? Okay. Who is the best trainer in boxing today? Now, in many ways, we're living through a boxing renaissance. Big fights, undisputed champions, increased visibility, and great fighters constantly achieving remarkable feats. However, as fans, we may be overlooking a critical piece of the puzzle, the training. Just as we're witnessing fighters reach new heights, we're also seeing a true golden age in boxing training. Okay? Legendary veterans like Freddie Roach, Pedro Diaz, and Virgil Hunter continue to man the corner. But we're also seeing a fantastic new crop of trainers making their mark. You know, Antonio and Joel Diaz, Bozianis, Bomac, Pandar Nahar, Kay Karoma, and many more, right? We got some of the most impressive trainers currently active in training championship level fighters and elite prospects today, right? Jose Benavidez Sr., okay, In his current stable, David, Jose Benavidez is in there, Diego Federico Pacheco, Julio Perez, okay? Ben Davidson, current state, Anthony Joshua, Leigh Wood, Fabio Woodley, Pat McCormack, and Moses Itama. Antonio and Joe Diaz, current stable. Israel Madrimov, MJ Akhmadaliev, Bekdamir Melikuziev, Bakodur Jalolov. I think I'm doing all right with these names. Shakram Giyasov, Badr Akhmedov, Alnur Abdurrahmov, etc. I think I did good with that. Let me do them again, etc. Israel Madrimov, MJ Akhmadaliev, Bekdamir Melikuziev, Bakodur Jalolov, Shakram Giyasov, Badr Akhmedov, Alnur Abdurrahmov, etc. Pat myself on the back. I did good with that. Wow. Okay. Bozy Ennis, current stable. Luke Zennis, Andy Cruz, and Haven Brady, right? The reigning trainer of the year, Robert Garcia, current stable. Bam Rodriguez, Virgil Ortiz, Raymond Muratalla, Jose Valenzuela, Rayo, Giovanni Santillan, Lindolfo Delgado, Oscar Duarte. Is Oscar still with him? I can't remember. I don't know. He might be. Oscar Duarte, Jose Ramirez, Arturo Cardenas, etc. Bomac McIntyre, Big Bo, Bomac McIntyre, current stable. Bud Crawford, Keyshawn Calvin, and Keon Davis, right? Chris Eubank Jr., Troy Isley, Floyd Diaz, Charles Harris Jr., Lester Martinez, Tristan Calcreef, etc. Honda Nahar, I guess I said his name right. Current stable. William Zepeda, Surreal Matias, Emmanuel Rodriguez, Kevin Gonzalez, and Juan Luis Aldana. Some of these people might have to be, but for the most part. Mark Ramsey, current stable. Archie Baturbiev, Christian Umbili, Arslan Makhmadov, and Jahan Arabio. Eddie Reynoso, current stable. Canelo Alvarez, Oscar Valdez, Frank Sanchez, and Jonathan Lopez. Just some of the current trainers, that's all we're looking at now. Freddie Roach, current stable. Jaime Munguia, Albert Rodriguez, Callum Walsh, Raul Curiel, and Gore Gavishjan. Manny Robles, current stable. Rafael Espinoza, Sergio Boachuk, Ronald Ali, and Gael Cabrera. Ismail Salas, current stable. Kazuto Ioka, Robisi Ramirez, Carlos Adamas, Alberto Purelas, Brian Mendoza, Gabriel Maestro, Brian Flores, Eric Priest, Elvis Gomez, etc. Bob Santos, current stable. Mario Barrios, Hector Garcia, Diana Pirro, and Luis Nunez. Ronnie Shields, current stable. David Morrell, Yoenis Tellez, Philip Hergovic, Andreas Katsarakis, Effie Apoki, and Amilcar Vidal. Some other notable trainers: Kevin Cunningham, Erickson Lubin, and Amo Williams. Calvin Ford, Tank Davis. Yeah, I'm still giving Tank to Calvin Ford. What was other? I forgot the other guy's name already. First blemish on the record. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Right? Calvin, he probably sleeps. Lamont Road, right? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Didn't seem like they had the same motivation in that fight. We get late in fights, Calvin get over there, get to talking to him and everything, and Tank come out there. He didn't look like in the later rounds he was missing that. And how in the hell is your trainer gonna let you forget the damn round, man? Every time Tank go over there when Calvin was a hit trainer, I hear Calvin telling the round just about after every round. That's on the trainer. A fighter don't know what round it is. That's on the trainer, man. That's one of your jobs. The fighter's job is to go out there in the 3 minutes and fight. The trainer's supposed to make sure he know what round it is, man. I hope Tank drops that guy like a hot damn potato. What was his name? I forgot his name already. Yeah, that's crazy, man. The man didn't even know what round it was. That's on the trainer. I'm sorry. That's on the trainer, man. That's on the trainer. Okay? I mean, the last thing you tell that fighter before you pull that stool out that ring, round 8, 4 more to go, round 9, 3, whatever. This man was out there, didn't even know what round it was, man. Come on. That's on the trainer. But anyway, Calvin Ford, Tank Davis. Rudy Hernandez, that's my round over. Rudy Hernandez, Junto Nakatani, Mickey Roman, and Makito Nakano. Okay? Virgil Hunter, Joshua Buatsi, and Soli Desaklo, Shingo Inoue, Naoya, and Takuma Inoue. John David Jackson, Clarissa Shields. We got Derek James, Ryan Garcia, and Frank Martin. I don't know who Earl Spence trainer is. Anybody know? Kay Karoma got Shushu Carrington, Ephraim Jogba, and Duke Reagan. Anatoly Lomachenko has Vasil Lomachenko. Gennady Shaninov has Dmitry Bivol and Shakram Giyasov. Shane McGuigan, Chris Williams-Smith, Adam Azim, and Caroline Dubois. Caroline and Daniel got different trainers as well. Caroline Dubois with Shane McGuigan. Grant Smith trained Sonny Edwards. Well, Sonny Edwards retired, I guess. Sonny Edwards, Dalton Smith, and Junaid Bostain. Sugar Hill Stewart, Tyson Fury, okay, Yuri Tachenko, Oleksandr Usyk, and Daniel Levin. Who trains Daniel Dubois? I didn't see his name. I didn't see Daniel's name. Okay, oh well. Now, what does it take to make a good trainer anyway? We still didn't get to that today, but we get to part of it. Okay, what does it take to make a good trainer? Anyway, tomorrow is Oregon. I'm not even gonna start it. Tomorrow is Oregon, Boston State. No, South Carolina. Friday we got a co-profile. We got Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren Friday for the co-profiles, and we're gonna cover that. We preview that little review of the 5 versus 5 they had over there. If you remember when Eddie got where I was like, please, Eddie, don't cry until you get off camera. Hold him to his back, Eddie. Had Wilder. That was Wilder's first fight with Eddie, wasn't it? That was the one where I don't know what Wilder was doing. He turned his back to Zhang and was like, I thought he was going to say something to his trainer or something. Then he turned back around and Zhang clocked it. And that was it. That was all she wrote. That was the end of it. Remember? And Just Do Boxing is coming up next in a few minutes in these YouTube streets. Okay, JBT Street. Great show yesterday over there, yeah. I don't know what them people talking about. I done forgot the guy's name already. When they were talking, they want to fight Shakur. Today is Thursday. When nobody even talking about it Monday. Now all of a sudden, Shakur is supposed to fight him. That's crazy. Some of these people don't, in the words of the great Roger Mayweather, some of these people don't know shit about boxing, right? The man get one win. And then Shakur is supposed to get in the ring with a damn prospect. Come on, man. I think Just Dude did a good enough job on it yesterday, but man, I just thought. And people still in the chat talking about, yeah, fight him. I forgot the guy's name. A prospect. And then when Shakur beat the shit out of him, the first thing they're going to say, oh, he was green. Shakur shouldn't have been in there with that young guy. That's the first thing they're going to say. What was he doing fighting him? The same people that's calling for the fight, right? It's crazy, man. That's exactly what they're going to say. Shakur had no business fighting that prospect. But now they're calling for the fight. And they wasn't even mentioning the guy's name Monday. It's just Thursday, right? Now he's the best thing since sliced bread. Like somebody in the set just do test say yesterday, get in there with Abdullah Mason so we can stop hearing about him. Feed him to Abdullah. We won't hear about him anymore. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I forgot the guy's name. Cuban guy. Cuban fighter. Good young fighter, don't get me wrong now. But he ain't ready for no Shakur, man. Come on, man. Damn, the guy's still a prospect. Let these prospects be prospects, man. But anyway, today on Just Do Boxing, Paulie Malignaggi, Gervonta Davis has bitch in him. Oh, shit. He's mentally weak and a front runner. Oh, my God. The Tank quit? Ooh. Damn, Just Do got a good one today. Well, Paulie Malignaggi says Gervonta Davis has bitch in him. Oh, let me get ready for that. God damn. Woo-wee. Okay, that's on Just Do Boxing in about a couple minutes from now. Paulie done talking some hot shit, boy. You better hope he don't meet up at Tank at no event or nothing. Like Teofimo was living dangerously, fooling with Bud. Till Bud pulled up on him. Teofimo done calmed down too. You know, these fighters and these people be at all these events together. You got to be careful, man. And some of these guys might be millionaires and fighters, but they came from the streets, right? And will run down on you. The man that said Tank got bitch in him. Well, let's do it. Oh, shit. See what that's all about on Just Do Boxing today, though, in about 5 minutes. But I appreciate everybody rocking with me today. Don't forget, on the way out the Cash Sports store, make sure you hit the like, and then on the way into Just Do's door, make sure you hit the like. On the way out, and then on the way in. Out and in, right? Out and in. Okay, but I appreciate everybody. Just Do Boxing. Crush the legend. Dre Finest. We had an Dre Finest sighting today, y'all. Salute Dre Finest. We're good to see Dre. Ray Patterson. Jarrell Hattie. Appreciate Kensaw Love One for the super chat. Let me my people that sitting over. This is my live. I know y'all didn't know I had a live studio audience, did y'all? Yeah. Appreciate Kensaw Love super chat one more time. Let my live studio audience do it. They sitting right over there watching. There you go. Okay, yeah. Y'all can start filing out now. Show about over. I'm talking to my studio audience. I'm getting ready to eat. But anyway, yeah, Just Do Boxing, Crush the Legend, Dre Finest, Ray Patterson, Jarrell Hattie, Kensaw Love One, Mike Rim, Lewis 4500, Tim Layton, Bruce Gas Boxing Jazz, and more. Mike Rim and Miss Cass. I appreciate everybody for rocking with Cass Sports today. Tomorrow is boxing. The Boxing in the State series continues tomorrow with South Carolina, right? We're going to talk about Joe Frazier again. Joe Frazier was in Philly. He's one of them two state boxers. We had a couple of them, remember? Like Hearns was born in Tennessee and then Detroit. We did Hearns for Michigan, and we're going to do him again for Tennessee. So South Carolina, we're going to talk about Joe Frazier again, okay? But so join me tomorrow for that. Because if it's Monday through Friday at 2 p.m., it's the Boxtorian bringing you all that boxing history. Just do boxing straight ahead. This is Cash Sports. I appreciate y'all 1,000%. Everybody have a great afternoon. I'll see you at Just Do Boxing. Don't meet me there, beat me there. Other than that, I will see y'all around those JBT streets.